Welcome to our podcast, Deep Dive MTR Explores Subsea Technology. I'm your host, Rhonda Moniz, and this is your portal to the latest news on all things subsea technology. This episode is brought to you by the publishers of Marine Technology Reporter, the world's largest circulation publication serving the global scientific, defense, and offshore energy subsea market. For more information, visit marinetechnologynews.com. Thanks, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Deep Dive. Really appreciate you guys all being here and listening in. We always talk to really interesting people, the movers and the shakers in our industry. And today is no exception. We have Massa Stancavish, and I've spoken with Dawn before. She's a pretty cool woman. She does a lot of really interesting things. She's the president, CEO, and chief innovation officer at Massa, and we're going to talk about Massa, and she's going to get a little bit more into it. But welcome, Dawn. Thank you so much for being on Deep Dive. Happy to have you. So let's get right into it then. So let's talk about Massa, and let's have you give us a little bit of. Can you share a little bit about Massa's history and in Massa's role in the maritime and defense industries?
Sure, Rhonda. Thank you for having me. It's great to talk to you again. Massa Products Corporation is a third-generation family business, and we were actually founded by my grandfather in 1945. So this year's our 80th year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. He was the industry point of contact during World War II that advanced sonar design and production. So in the 3.5 years of World War II, the Navy at the beginning of the war only had one type of sonar transducer. And in those 3.5 years, they developed hundreds of different versions. My grandfather came up with 200 different designs, and he oversaw the transfer to production of 150 of those designs, and they produced thousands.
Wow.
And the way they were able to do that is because we were under fire, and we had to come out with innovative solutions that were producible in a short period of time to deliver to the warfighter. And when the war was over, he founded his own company, which became Massa Products Corporation in the future. But he took all of the things he learned from when he was a young engineer, well before the war, and the stuff that he learned to rapidly innovate and put quality devices into production as cornerstones to what our business is now. So we still have that mentality and that flexibility and being able to cut red tape and put designs in when they have to be implemented. But also right now in the maritime defense industrial base, we're a pretty strong player for a small company. We provide over 60% of the sonar transducers and arrays for the SSNs, SSBNs, and SSGNs.
So what are some key projects, and how do you support national security and defense initiatives?
So that's an interesting layered question because we have a lot of production contracts that are, bid and proposal type contracts for production. We're the incumbent on several of those contracts for sonar for the submarines. But we also, because we're a small business, we go after a bunch of different SBIRs, which are small business set-asides that allow us to innovate. We do that to continue to grow. We have a commercial side of the business as well that we have a different way of thinking than how the military often thinks. And I think that through what we've found over the last few years, when things have started to get more serious for national security with what's been going on, with Russia and China and Iran and other places, there's been an emphasis on what can we be doing and how could we be doing things better. And one of the things that we do for industry is we really look at what the problem is that needs to be solved and figure out, is there a more effective way to solve that problem? So we're having conversations like that to improve technology as well.
Well, it's really important conversations to have. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was workforce development and I know buildsubmarine.com is a major initiative to address workforce challenges and specifically in the submarine industry. How did you get in, how did Massa get involved in this initiative?
Well, um, Massa, being a main acoustic supplier for submarines, keeps up to date with what might be going on in that whole industry. And what happened during COVID, it was kind of like a perfect storm for manufacturing as well as defense, where for years and years and years, our nation has been telling people go to college, go to college, go to college. So there were fewer people in the technical trades to begin with. And what we saw here during COVID is that because we were small and because we were for national defense, we had the exception. So we were able to stay open and in person. I pushed really hard at the time to make sure that we had things in place so that we could be safe and be in person during that time. What I noticed during the same time is not all of the suppliers that we use and not all of the competitors that we even work with or compete against or other companies that we work with, they didn't necessarily implement the same type of protocol. And so was an increase in remote work. There was a whole generation, I believe, of really talented, skilled tradesmen and women that just said, you know what, forget this, I'm retiring. And they left the workforce. And the problem with that in a lot of the areas, such as, castings, weldings, cable manufacturing, technical specific types of components that
So
are
those are the
required.
gaps. Those are the gaps
Those
you're
are the
seeing.
gaps.
Yeah.
And those people, they need to be trained to do those jobs for many, many years, like, 7 to 15 years to really get in and out of certain areas of those types of skills and trades to really fine tune. Like the skilled group that left, they weren't just the ones that knew how to do it, they were the ones that they needed to train the next generation.
Right.
So the Maritime Industrial Base is what it's called now, but first it was stood up by the Navy to be the Submarine Industrial Base. So they were doing this to have a whole office to understand what the workforce problems are, because the Navy has a 1+2 objective for the submarines. They want to build 2 Virginia class submarines and 1 Columbia class a year. And they were having trouble with the workforce in general across the board because this need to increase the production happened at exact same time following COVID. But it wasn't just COVID that did it. It was also this whole cultural push to go to college instead of into trades. So it was a combination of all those things that really hurt the industry, and the Navy responded, I'd say, very well and very quickly. And there's been a whole focus on workforce development, on building up awareness for the trades and what it means for national security and bringing manufacturing back to America. And Massa fits in a really unique little nook there because we've never lost those skills or those capabilities. We never lost our workforce. We have actually grown. And during COVID, we grew about 50%.
Wow.
So we've been increasing our skill set and our talent base, and we've had some successes there, and we've been talking to different partners within the maritime industry. And there's the Navy also set up a part of their whole effort something called the talent pipeline program. So they have it in different regions, and Massa joined to offer our areas of what works and what doesn't, and meet the other companies in our state and in New England to see if there's ways we could all collaborate to help each other, because at the end of the day, um, the world is not a safe place, and there is an important uh, need to have people find a career in this industry that can help them have a sense of purpose through their work, but also help build up our security and national defense in various ways. And companies like mine um, have lots of different jobs, and there is no one path of success. So, for instance, um, a child in a family that they think maybe college wasn't in the cards because it's so darn expensive, they might think that they only have a bunch of, not so great job choices ahead for them, and that's not necessarily true. So there's this beautiful path and of opportunity and a way to make communities stronger and to build technical, capability and knowledge through the defense industry um, for lots of different levels.
So you don't have to be and you don't have to join the Navy, or you don't have to join the Army or any of that. What you're saying is that, there are skills in a trade that people can learn, that they can get the qualifications for, and create these maritime careers because of the demand for submarine parts and systems and things like that. But so if somebody's not a traditional engineer, because a lot of times that's the route that they go, right? And for me, for example, I've been on all sides of this industry. I've worked with underwater robotics and things like that. I've written about it. I've got podcasts. I've been in the field working with the systems, but I'm not an engineer, and engineering was never something that was interesting to me. So if you don't have a traditional engineering background, how do you break into the field if you want to do work with submarines or a company like Massa?
See, that's a terrific question because I myself am not a full-fledged engineer. I took about 2 years of engineering to know I could do this, but it takes me a lot more time to do this. And I realized that what I did have was a unique fit in this field. And I think a lot of people of different ages from different backgrounds could find that unique fit too. If they have uh, a need to feel like their career uh, is something of importance opposed to just a job, then the defense industry has lots of different pockets for them. If you have any kind of technical interest at all, there's a lot of we lost in the whole COVID and pre-COVID with the push to go to colleges. We lost a lot of our technical trade schools. Those are starting to get built back now. A lot of companies like ours, we work with high school students and college co-ops, and there's a whole path in our area of industry at Massa and other companies as well, where they are looking to have, tradespeople. So we're talking, learning people who might become welders or CNC machinists or electricians instead of going and working for, um, you know, just a general market. There's a potential larger benefit package for those people in the defense industry because you have security, you're doing something for national security, and you have overall higher pay. And the people that are really interested in, maybe they want to eventually become an engineer, but they didn't have the money to do, a full engineering college. It's a kind of a big deal to start with the trades. And if you really grow as you're maturing and you're interested in what you're doing and you want to learn more, there's a good chance there's a company out there that's a great fit for you that would also invest in you to become an engineer in the future. So it's a way better, ROI for the individual as well as for the company to get in that route. Because I mean, I have two kids. My oldest is, trying to decide which college to go to. And I'll tell you, there's some colleges that it's like, why would you take out a huge loan to go there when you could
Hmm.
just go here and then open up the door for wherever you want to do for grad school? I think too many people in America think that whatever you choose is permanent, and it is so fluid, and there's so many things. And I think what's
Yep.
more important is finding that connection to national security, finding that connection to having a job with purpose, finding a connection that what you do each day is a part of you, and you can deliver a meaningful service not just through your work but also to protect freedom and life as we know it. That's a huge thing that this industry offers that others just can't.
Absolutely. Now, could you talk a little bit about how buildsubmarines.com fits in? How what's Massa's role with buildsubmarines.com as well?
So buildsubmarines.com is this really cool thing that's part of the what used to be the submarine industrial base, now the maritime industrial base. So they were the SIB and now they're the MIB, kind of like Men in Black, which is kind of funny. Um, but they're a division out of the Navy, and there is defense funding that goes through that. But what they did, and you'll see at Red Sox games and certain commercials, there's these big commercials about we build giants and buildsubmarines.com. Um, what that really is a call to action to the American people. Anyone that wants to find these careers can go to that website, and there's Massa is only one of many companies that's listed there, and there's different trades and job positions that are listed for different companies, no matter where you are in the country. And Massa is one of the companies on there, and we are in a very unique position where we're looking for folks that can do machining. We're looking for folks that can do, we're looking for electricians. We're looking for both CNC machinists as well as traditional machinists. We're looking for people that want to be assemblers. And the types of parts that a lot of defense industries like Massa build, you can't just replace those lines with machinery. You need the hands-on human inspection. There's QC jobs on that site. There's every level of technical and sometimes other listings through there to just build up the workforce required to build up the companies to be able to deliver on the parts and the components for submarines. So it's not just you're going to go there and build a submarine, and it's not an ask to join the Navy. It's a, hey, find a job that you really like, that you could improve your life and improve the world around us by going there and seeing what would work for you. And I would say to people going there, look for something that you can really connect to, and a company that you can really connect to, because I'd say culture is a huge component as well.
So when talking about culture, it's a really interesting thing. What do you think about workforce diversity and its impact on innovation in submarine and maritime tech industries?
I was actually just at a submarine conference, and you want to get to a point like these submariners are talking about. It's kind of a new thing for women to even be on submarines, for instance.
Right. That's one of
And
the
they're
things I
now,
was thinking of, yeah. Because
and
there's a
now
lot of
they're
women that are listening to this, or a lot of young girls and college students, and I was gonna ask you, I don't know if you're involved with any of the technical schools or universities, Massa if Massa is, but I was thinking of that. I was thinking, well, what if you're a female and you're interested in this field? I mean, how does that look?
Yeah, I think it looks really strong for women right now, honestly, against what we might be hearing in various news sources. The reason I think this is because I think there's been a lot of women that have worked really hard. And I think that for a little while, out of good intentions, there was a focus to try, let's hire more women just because they're women. And that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help the women that worked their butts off to earn where they were and where they got to. And it doesn't help the new women coming in, because you need to be able to meet the standards that you need to meet, whether it's on a submarine, whether it's in industry. And I think the most important thing about diversity is that, what I was trying to say at the conference, they were saying they're not even looking at, women submariners versus men submariners. They're just looking submariners. You meet the need that they have, and you're doing what you need to do, and they're in. And I've always run, since I've been in this position, this company, this way, because I feel that I had to work extra hard being a third generation here. I'm not an engineer, and the two before me, my father, my grandfather, were engineers. So I'm bringing something completely different to the table. But it's not, I'm not here because I'm just the third generation. I'm here because I chose to bring where I saw avenues for growth for the company in. And I'd say to other young women out there, there's so much potential for diversity and thought across the board. And, to me, diversity is where you come from in terms of what's your background, what are your thoughts, what's your educational, but that is all diversity. I
Yep.
don't care what color someone is. I don't care
Yep.
what I don't care where someone comes from. I just care that they're bringing the good ideas to the table. I care that they can do the tasks that they can do. What no employer wants is somebody to lie on their resume and somebody to try to negotiate what I call a leapfrog position, where they come in at a certain pay rate, uh, and you find out pretty quickly, oh geez, they don't really want to be here. They're just using this to get to the next job. And I'd caution all companies to look out for that. And the way to eliminate that is to be honest at the front with what you're looking for. Massa is here for the long term. We're not a short term business. So I tell people at the front end, like, hey, we're looking for people that are really serious about wanting to be here. And, if they are, it becomes very evident throughout the conversation and through what's offered and whether or not they take it.
As the blue economy grows globally, Marine Technology Reporter has the world's largest audited subsea audience. MTR offers insights and analysis from researchers, innovators, and thought leaders in ocean subsea commerce, defense, and academia. At MTR, we always stay one step ahead. For more information on how you can stay on the cutting edge, go to www.marinetechnologynews.com. By way of collaboration, can you talk a little bit about AUKUS and what that means and why that's important?
Absolutely. So AUKUS was an agreement, trilateral agreement between Australia, UK, and US that's still embraced. It was set up originally under the Biden administration, is embraced and continued through the Trump administration, which is fantastic. Because a lot of what we do for industrial base and for defense, they're bipartisan issues, and our allies are also very much needed. And we need to collaborate with other countries as much as we need to collaborate with other companies and industry and DoD. And through all of these efforts and workforce development, there's a lot of potential through AUKUS to help each other and grow the industrial base that way as well. We are selling some submarines to Australia. Australia is committed $3 billion to the U.S., and they've already paid $500 million of it. So it's a wonderful thing. And it also allows, through some of these companies on buildsubmarines.com, and depending on what the efforts are, there might be opportunities for people that are joining through trades that might eventually get chances to travel, not just within the US but potentially to our allies. And that's a whole other thing that maybe people aren't thinking of. Just kind of like some colleges offer study abroad programs. You never know if a company is going to have an AUKUS focused program that somebody could get into, and it could be really wonderful. I think it's an incredibly important thing. It's going to allow us to have greater strength and greater opportunities.
So my next question is more of it's a kind of like a double question. So, you're the chief innovations officer, so you're the perfect one to ask this question. There's all kinds of technological advances that are coming down the road. Things are always changing. I guess the first part of that is, what technological advances do you see shaping the future of the industry? And then how can workforce training evolve to keep up with those emerging technologies?
So that's a really interesting question, because there are so many emerging technologies across the defense industry that I couldn't possibly speak to all of them. The ones that are, shiny and people know right now are things like AI, additive manufacturing, robotics. Those kinds of things are great and cool and awesome. They have their place. I don't see automation replacing humans 100% or even 90% anytime soon, or ever, actually, because these parts need to be, you need the human element. You really do. I mean, when a
Right.
submarine goes underwater, um, it has human lives on board, and you can't afford to have the absence of human reason and human judgment in the equation for those components. For my specific business, the way I see advances in technology is that Mass is unique in what we do, in the sense that we design, engineer, and manufacture all in house. So, what that means is other companies might be only think tanks where they're innovating, but they don't know how to transfer it to production and mass produce any of those things. And other companies are like build shops where they could get a drawing package and build it. But that doesn't mean that they understand all of the intricacies of what's in that drawing and what's in that design. And where I see the growth for us technologically is exactly counterintuitive to where other companies have seen it. A lot of businesses right now are growing through mergers and acquisitions, whereas Massa said, you know what, we're going to grow on our own and we're going to focus on our type of technology. And it's always been our model to advance the field of electroacoustics, as well as put products into production for sale, whether it's the government or industry. And in so doing, we now, we've got about 170 patents. We're still adding to that number. We're looking at new ways sound could be used. We cover the entire sound spectrum, infrasound to megahertz range. And there's no company that has the history that we have with that type of technology. So there are some universities that do some fantastic work. There's other companies that do, acoustic products. But for us, advancing technology is unique ways to use sound and integrate it with other devices and other companies. I think companies that can collaborate can offer a stronger overall solution oftentimes than a one-stop shop that's a big giant company that thinks that they have acquired the talent, skills, and capabilities just because they bought another company. We all know that when that happens, it's a unique situation where there's a company that retains the technical knowledge and know-how. Some do, and some do that really well. Others don't, and talent gets lost, and nuances in design get lost in translation, similar to what we saw with the trades folks that retired during COVID.
So if you're out there and you're listening to this episode of this podcast, and you're interested in learning more about, career opportunities in this industry, what advice would you give somebody that's looking to get in the industry, and what advice would you give to companies that are companies that are struggling with workforce? What would your advice be to somebody looking to get into the industry, and what would your advice be for companies in the industry that are looking to find workforce employees,
Sure. So I
qualified
think,
employees?
yeah, I think that my main, to the person looking, be willing to take on new things that you don't know. To the companies that are looking to hire, I'd say be a little bit more open-minded to training than you may have been before, because I think that we also shouldn't forget that there was a bit of an in-person educational gap at different developmental stages of new folks that are joining the workforce now. Whatever happened at whatever stage of development is staying with that person in some way, even if they're regaining those skills. What I mean by that is, I had a fourth grader and an eighth grader when COVID hit, and they went completely remote. So at that time, we had to figure out what they needed for accommodation so that they had a proper education in that time when they were not able to be in school. Other people joining the workforce were much older, because we look at where we are now. Those kids, my kids are still in, high school, but the people coming out of high school were at different stages of development. And depending on where they were, they might have missed some things, and that's not their fault. And we as an industry need to recognize that. It does not mean that they could not learn essential skills. It does not mean that they could not be fantastic people in our workforce. What it means is we need to have a clear expectation of what the viable workforce is right now, and figure out, is there a plan that we could put in place to help train these kids, that or adults depending on if they're a co-op or an intern or a new employee, um, to help bring them up to speed so that they learn and they grow. And I think having clarity and expectations as an employer to communicate to the workforce, as well as I'd say to anyone joining a company, they need to have clarity in what it is they want to do with their career, and be able to have those types of conversations when they're looking to join.
And so, actually, you bring up some really good points, and I guess, and also I would imagine that buildsubmarines.com would be another
It's
asset to go there and take a look and well, get a wealth of information.
Absolutely, because they have all different types of job listings, all different types of companies. So the individual definitely wants to connect with, okay, what do I really want to do with my life? What are the types of things, and what's a path that might this working with a company might help me get to where I want to be, even if I'm not there now, and communicating that with whoever you're interviewing with, and then the companies out there using that. Whoever's not on there that's in defense should definitely get on there, because I think that's really helpful. And the talent pipeline group through the MIB is also beneficial to companies who are struggling and companies who are not struggling, because I think that back to my other point, you need to be able to collaborate. You need to be able to work with other companies right now. And you want to be able to collaborate with Navy and with the DoD, because if you don't, you're in the dark, and you need to really, like, our nation and our world right now needs to advance quickly. We have near peer competitors that are advancing at alarming rates. That is, public information. And we could be in a position where if we work together, we could get to an answer a lot faster. And I think that's a huge message that I have, for other companies. I love working with other companies. I love working with students, and I think that other companies need to embrace that as well.
This part of the maritime industry is growing. It's important. It's an important aspect. It's an important part of the industry, number one. Number two, you see this going on all the time. We just saw it with offshore wind. The offshore wind is right in you're in my backyard here. And one of the biggest complaints was, they said all these jobs are going to be coming in. 80,000, I think, was one of the numbers I heard for offshore wind down here. And then they complained that there was no trained workforce to be able to hire locals because they were trying to keep everything local.
Yep.
So to me, it seems very important to really take a look at, like you just said, the world's an unsafe place and we're behind on a lot of things. So we need to build that up, and, we need the workforce to be able to do that.
And I think that culture makes retention a lot easier too. I view hiring as it's a negotiation. It's not just a negotiation for pay, it's a negotiation for happiness for the
Right?
employer as well as the employee. I want to invest in somebody that wants to invest in me.
Right.
And you just don't have retention without that.
Absolutely. You want your employees to be happy. You want to be happy with their work, their level of work, and you want them to be happy with the work culture so that they won't want to leave. Absolutely.
And I want them to want to do better. You got to set the higher expectation, but also have realistic expectations. The training program, you can't hire somebody up here and expect them to be up there today. You just can't. Sometimes you can, but they're still not going to be there for you, because wherever they've come from, it's there. They're there technically, they're there mentally and understanding wise. They're not there with you and your culture. You have to
Right.
have that grace period to make sure that you're doing everything you can to bring them to speed, and they are getting what they need to understand what you want. I think That's really important. And I've seen that that's not always the case. Um, there's been cases here where it was sometimes just a little misunderstanding and we've been able to clear it up. There, you want fire fast at the same time. If someone's not a good fit, you want them out quickly. That's not a bad thing. That is better for them and it's better
Hmm.
for you. It allows them quickly to get on to somewhere where they belong and allows you to make sure that you've got the resources in place that you really need and that you're not wasting resources on something that's not working.
Exactly, and you wanna make sure that they know your expectations and they're aware of what you want out of that particular job, and that they're able to do that, because otherwise people are gonna feel disrespected, or they're gonna feel, just they're not gonna have any connection, like you said. They're not gonna
Yeah,
have that connection to the company, and you wanna get those employees in there that wanna do better for the company because they're a part of the culture, they're a part of the team, and they wanna feel like they're a part of the team.
absolutely. And you want somebody that's, ambassador for your company, that they are representing your company no matter where they are because they are culturally committed. They feel the passion that you need them to feel. And and honestly, what employer doesn't want their I don't want people to think it's just a job. I
Mhm.
want them to feel like I love where I work. I'm taken care of. I'm part of the family. I'm doing something important. I feel good each day by what I do. And that's not to say every day is great. We have challenges, but we want them to
Right.
feel empowered by and rise to those challenges instead of feeling drained or overwhelmed or like unappreciated. That's not who we are. And I think that it's important to uh, have a culture that people feel that they can really connect to and that they belong.
Well, I think that you're, that's very refreshing. You foster a good sounds like you're at Mass, you foster a great culture for the workplace and for the people that work with you, and I think that's really important as well, and I think a lot of places, unfortunately, don't do that, so, it's nice to hear.
So thank
Everybody's
you.
gonna wanna come to work for Massa now.
Well, I don't have that many openings, unfortunately, but the good not yet will hopefully. But the good news about it, and that's the message. I think it does Massa good to have our other industry partners have a similar type of mentality because we all collaborate and we all win by working together, like I said, and um, we really need these people to build the parts for the submarines right now. And we really need, parts for submarines are not just things that go on the boat. They're things that outfit the boat. It's the UUVs, it's other things, everything is an integrated system that works together. There's sensors, there's, valves, there's, equipment. There's so many layers of things,
Yeah,
but the most important cargo on those submarines are the men and women that are on board.
I agree. Well, Dawn, it's always a pleasure to have you, on the show and to talk to you because you're a wealth of knowledge in this area. And I always really like talking to you because I always learn so much about what's going on in that sector. So I know how busy you are. So I've been to your facility and you've got a lot going on. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Oh, thank you, Rhonda. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for inviting me on the show. Happy to be here.
Thanks. This episode of Deep Dive was brought to you by the publishers of Marine Technology Reporter. Interested in being a guest or a sponsor for Deep Dive? For more information about this podcast and many other opportunities for your company to stay informed and in the know, go to marinetechnologynews.com. And as usual, hit like and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. See you again on the next Deep Dive.